The UK is already playing a leadership role here. Our new task force, AI task force, which we should talk about, is £100 million, which means that we're investing more in safety research for AI than any government anywhere in the world, and doing so in a way that I think is agile. But also, we're working with the companies themselves, DeepMind, Anthropic, and OpenAI. I'm pleased that they've said that they will give early or priority access to the models so that we can develop the right type of evaluation and research safety. So I think that's a really positive step forward.
Rishi, I am so excited to do this. We last did this in COVID on Zoom. To do this in person is such a joy. So thank you so much for doing this.
No, it's great. It's great to see you. Welcome to Downing Street.
It is lovely to finally meet. I want to start there. I think parents shape us in so many ways. When you think back to your childhood and your parents, how do you think about how they shaped you today?
My parents are both in healthcare, which is quite important for how I was brought up. So my mum was a pharmacist. She ran a local pharmacy. My dad was a GP. And I grew up working for my mum. So for me, just seeing the importance of the NHS and healthcare to people's lives was just a hugely important part of our upbringing. And it matters to me today, which is why I spend so much time focusing on the NHS and making sure that people get the healthcare they need. I guess the other thing is my mum was a small business owner. Yeah. She ran her pharmacy. I worked in it. I helped her with the accounts. So I saw what it took to run a small business, the trials and tribulations, but also how fulfilling it was to provide jobs for people and make a difference that way. But perhaps the most powerful thing is education. I mean, it's a kind of classic Indian immigrant thing anyway, but for my parents, education was everything. So they strived and sacrificed so that me and my brother and sister could just have great education, because they believed that was the best way you could help your children have a better life than you. And that is something that I passionately believe today. So I think education is the closest thing we have to a silver bullet. And part of my job as PM is to make sure everyone has access to world-class education.
Can I ask a bizarre question?
Yeah.
And I'm not meant to go off script. When you become PM, do you call your mother and
I can't. Gosh, on the day, I'm trying to remember. Actually, I don't know if I did. I can't remember if I did. It was so busy that day. But I'm very close to them. They, I saw them. Actually, I saw them yesterday. As it turned out, they came to see us for lunch. But I saw them a few weeks ago because I was back in Southampton for a football match not that long ago, and they still had season tickets at St Mary's, and so I got to see them during the game. It was actually quite sweet because my mum had. They were upset because I'd come to visit the pharmacy that my mum ran earlier in the week. I hadn't told them I was back in Southampton. They were very upset. They tried to come and see me. It wasn't possible. And my mum had got some Indian sweets that she wanted to give me that she'd made called burfi that she couldn't give me then, but then she managed to give them to me at the football match, which was important to her. And then, oddly enough, I saw President Zelensky on the Monday after that, and he and I were chatting, and he was hungry, so I gave him some of my mum's burfi, which she was very happy to.
She must have been thrilled.
Yeah, she was thrilled by that. So yeah.
Now, obviously, it's London Tech Week. I want to dive straight in and ask you, when we think about kind of collaboration and working together, respectfully, I think there's a big chasm between private sector knowledge and then public sector and regulation. How do we think about working together most effectively between these two, not at all opposing, but just different sides?
I was talking earlier at London Tech Week, and one of the things I said is, what's the most important thing that people should look to why the UK can be the best place for this anywhere in the world? And I said the answer was leadership. It's just people in your industry having the confidence that the government, and in particular me as Prime Minister, gets it. And I do. It's partly my background, where I spent my time working, whether it's in California or elsewhere. But I want to make sure that government acts a bit more like the world that you come from in terms of its ability to be innovative, to move at pace. But I think it's really important that government is engaging constantly with the innovative part of our country, because that's how we're going to drive growth and create jobs for people. And government needs to be understanding what do we need to put in place to make sure that that is successful.
I totally agree with you. How do you think about measuring success of what we do and how we work together?
Yeah. So one of the things I did which was quite I think disruptive and radical in a good way, was I created a brand new department. The Department for Science, Innovation and Technology, because it was important to me. I wanted to send a strong signal that this agenda is something that government needs to take seriously and do differently. And that department is going to do things differently. It's attracting people from the industry. It's taking a slightly more risk approach to innovation. So I think that is all powerful. Look, how do we measure success? Look, the traditional things, how much venture capital are we raising here? How many unicorns are we creating here? I think we all know the stats, right? More than France and Germany combined, more unicorns than anywhere apart from the US and China. Are the next exciting technologies all happening here, whether that's quantum, engineering, biology, AI, et cetera, fintech? I think those are all the kind of obvious ways to measure it. But I think, are large companies coming to locate here, which they are, right? Actually, just incredible announcement today, Andreessen Horowitz, all the world's most successful VC investors opening their first international office here in the UK. And that just comes on the back of Palantir saying that they're going to do their AI headquarters for research here in the UK. And we've had all the large labs, Anthropic, OpenAI, joining DeepMind and opening international offices here in the UK. So again, those are all metrics that tell me we must be getting something right, because companies are voting with their feet.
How much do you think success compounds? I know that sounds a strange one, but when you start to see Andreessen, it's kind of like dominoes falling.
Yes.
And suddenly, I spend a lot of time on Twitter. I have a lot more free time than you do. But you suddenly see people go oh, wow. And this is a real signal. And then you saw a lot more VCs be oh, wow, is it the next Miami? And are we seeing this incredible rise again of London like we have done over the last few years?
Yeah, I think so. I think success breeds success. I think as well, given the pace that the tech ecosystem works at, government needs to be responsive to that pace and just constantly show that we're moving forward. And Andreessen coming is great. Lots of people are already here, and I think things are going really well already. But if I think back, look, this is a country that was at the forefront of the Industrial Revolution. Think of all the things that were invented here in the UK, in steam engines, the forefront of electricity, how we mechanized textiles, how we built modern roads, the process for making steel, even the lawnmower saying was another thing. I mean, you name it, it was invented here. I think we're at the cusp of another period like that, and there's no doubt in my mind that the UK can lead that again as we did in the past.
I remember I first fell in love with venture when I was 13. And when you said venture in London 13 years ago, it was just who is this strange child? So I tear from well for sure.
Yeah.
Regulation-wise,
yes,
it's something that I as an investor think about a lot, and we worry about actually sometimes stifling innovation. But how do we think about creating a regulatory structure or regulation that actually allows for great innovation and to let London blossom in the way that we think it can, and the UK blossom?
So the UK has historically got this right because we get the balance right between being supportive of innovation to harness all the benefits that it brings, but at the same time, making sure that we've got appropriate guardrails in place to protect people, businesses, society. And it goes back all the way to the Enlightenment, to the Industrial Revolution. I think it's part of our DNA that we just instinctively know how to get that balance right. And we're going to do that again when it comes to AI. I'm confident that we can help shape the global conversation on the guardrails that we need to put in place so that we get the incredible benefits of AI, whether it's in drug discovery, healthcare, education, public services, the economy, but at the same time, we're protecting ourselves against the obvious risks that it brings. And I'm excited to, as I said, bring together people, as you said, from academia, from the companies and policymakers together to have that conversation this autumn.
Yeah, you said about the conversation this autumn. Talk to me about that, because we announced it last week, I think.
Yes.
What's the conversation and how's it going down?
So I think what I want to do is bring together all those people so that we can consider the risks and make sure we have a good joint understanding of what the different types of risks are, have a joint approach to safety and research and evaluation, and then also a conversation about what the right guardrails are that we need to put in place. Now, in that bucket about research and evaluation, I'm delighted that the UK is already playing a leadership role here. Our new task force, AI task force, which we should talk about, is £100 million, which means that we're investing more in safety research for AI than any government anywhere in the world. And doing so in a way that I think is agile. But also we're working with the companies themselves, DeepMind, Anthropic and OpenAI. I'm pleased that they've said that they will give early or priority access to the models so that we can develop the right type of evaluation and research safety. So I think that's a really positive step forward.
And you teaming up there, AI Task Force, 100 million fund. Can you talk to me about that initiative? And also where the funding is actually going? Is it companies? Is it to actually kind of AI safety? How do we think about effective deployment?
So I think the first thing is this task force is a bit different. I think it's reflective of how I approach these things. And the task force is a model on the vaccine task force. It's a little bit arm's length from government. It will be empowered to move at pace, to do things differently. And I think that's important because, as you know, probably better than most, right? We need to move at pace, and I want to find the right person to chair that task force, which we haven't announced yet, because that process is still going, who's empowered to do that. And they will make ultimately the decisions, to be honest, about what the best way to allocate the resources are. But a key part of it is going to be safety research. And, I think it's important that governments develop the capability to do research evaluations, safety evaluations, auditing of these large language models. That's something that the companies themselves are already doing, by the way, and I think they will welcome that. I want the UK not just to be the kind of intellectual home of AI regulation, but also the geographic home. And as I said, we're going to take a lead in that part.
This is also the largest amount from any other nation, though.
Yes, and I think it is. When it comes to safety research, we will be investing more in this than anywhere else. I think it's critical that governments do, because I think we're cognizant that AI, yes, incredible opportunities it's going to bring, but obviously it comes with risks as well. Governments need to be in the leading role for making sure we understand those risks, and that's what safety research will help us do, and make sure that we can protect people against them. And I don't see why the UK can't be a leader in that. If you look at the quality of our AI research base, it's fantastic.
I completely agree. I think one thing that's crucial to maintaining that kind of hopefully early lead is just the talent and the engineering minds that we have in the UK. How do we think about creating educational infrastructure and institutions and maintaining them in a way that means we can lead the kind of AI race, revolution, whatever we want to call it?
I think, that's probably the most important thing, because we're in a perennial war for talent. Companies are, countries are, and
businesses are.
Yeah.
That's the biggest problem.
The biggest thing. Any CEO I speak to is one will talk to me about, it's just getting access to talent, right? So I guess there's two ways to think about it. One is, what are we doing here in the UK? Now, a few years ago, when I was Chancellor, I was already talking about AI and talking about the benefits it could bring as a general purpose technology. And what I did was increase our funding for AI master's conversion courses. Mm-hmm. So this is for people who are coming from non-STEM backgrounds to develop master's level capability in AI competencies like data science. And to make sure that universities developed those courses. So I massively increased the funding for those, and they're working out really well. And we also funded more scholarships, because I wanted to make sure people from disadvantaged backgrounds had access to these same educational opportunities in AI. So we increased the number of scholarships as well. So that's all happening here domestically, which is great. But we've also got to win the international war for talent, as you said. And here I'm making sure that we have what I believe is the world's most competitive visa regime for highly skilled talent. So we've got a new innovator founder visa for people who want to come here and set up businesses. We've got a new scale-up visa for companies that are scaling up, so they can bring the talent that they want very easily. And then I created something that I'm particularly proud of called the High Potential Individual Visa. That basically says if you graduate from a global top 50 university, you can speak English and you've got an amount to support yourself, just come to the UK. You don't need to have a job. You can come here for a couple of years, figure out what you want to do, and then we'll need to put you on a proper visa. But we just think you're a talented person who can add to our country, and we want to have a massive welcome, open for business sign. And that visa is something that very few, if any, other countries have. So you put all of that together, and then we've got a special AI program that's deliberately targeting 100 of the top global AI talents and trying to attract them here. I think that's a pretty compelling set of initiatives.
It absolutely is. Can I ask you a weird one, which is, you obviously have children. If you were to advise someone coming out into the workforce today, they would sit down with you and say, what would you advise me, Rishi? Entering the workforce today in the UK, what would you advise?
So my kids are young, and so I'm gonna go.
I'm thinking I can plan ahead.
Yeah, no, well, actually, I'm gonna go back. So before we even get to that point, something that I'm really passionate about is having more children study maths. And one of my initiatives is to have maths be studied up to 18. Yeah. We are a global outlier in allowing our children to stop studying maths at 16. And almost all developed countries have the study of maths go all the way to 18 years old. And, I think we need to look at that, and we need to think about how we would do that too here. So, because for any job, I think increasingly having an understanding of mathematical concepts is really important. Even in the creative industries where you might think, gosh, that's got nothing to do with it. Mm-hmm. Look at all the jobs in the creative industries and post-production. Maths is an incredibly important part of it. But also just for participating in modern society and modern life, having strong financial literacy is important. It means you're less likely to be unemployed, that you can earn more, that you can have a more fulfilling life. So I'm really passionate, even earlier. So my kids are 10 and 12, and they know that they're going to have to study maths all the way up to 18. Doesn't mean everyone has to do maths A-level, by the way, right? There's different forms of maths that will work for different people.
I also think so much goes back to teaching. Most of the times it's like textbook, but I remember when I was at school, which is longer ago now, but it was like textbook based and boring.
And that's
AI changed
a lot. I say probably there's lots of things to get excited about when it comes to AI. For me, the thing that I'm probably most excited about is education. Yeah. Because I talked right at the beginning of your first question about what I learned from my parents, and for me, the power of education to transform people's lives is unmatched. Yeah. And if we can harness AI to provide, to reduce the burden for teachers, whether it's marking, lesson planning, and make our best teachers even better by helping them, that's great. But also providing personalized individual learning for each pupil, which we know is kind of almost the holy grail, right? Tutoring is incredibly powerful, but it's hard to do that with humans for the obvious cost of age.
It's incredibly hard.
Yeah. But if you can have every child have essentially a personalized tutor, can just imagine how incredible that would be for their development and growth and their future opportunities. So that's the area where I'm perhaps most excited.
I totally agree. Are you ready for a quick fire round?
Always.
Okay, so you bring these. I say a short statement, you give me your immediate.
Right, okay.
Now, let's start with, you've got a day free on the weekend, which admittedly is with dear, and I'm Rishi. You've got a day free on the weekend. How are you going to spend that day?
With my kids, who I don't see enough. I'd probably do breakfast with them. It's one of my, I'm not massively into cooking, but breakfast is one of the things I can do. I cook breakfast.
What do you cook?
I do a cooked breakfast, and my scrambled eggs are important to me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Do we have milk? Do we have butter?
No, gosh, no. Definitely butter, no milk. I use the Gordon Ramsay kind of recommended way to do scrambled eggs, which I interviewed him when I was Chancellor as I was doing research for the interview, and I came across, he has this video which has been watched a gazillion times about how to cook scrambled eggs, which is slightly counterintuitive to how most of us do it, because it doesn't have milk.
Okay.
And it's not high heat. Anyway, so I'd recommend it. I do that. Dog, we have Nova, our Labrador, so dog walk, time with the kids, and if I've got time to take my wife out for dinner at our favourite tapas restaurant in the evening, that would be great.
Okay,
but this is a very hypothetical day. I haven't had that day in a very long time. Just so we can...
It was a distant memory. Yeah. You have a last meal. This is very centered around food. We did the Food Discovery Network. You have a last meal. What would you choose?
Easy club sandwich, fries, and Mexican Coke.
I mean, that is a fantastic one. Let's go for, if you could go to any concert, any performer, dead or alive, where would you go?
Gosh, let me think. Well, I missed all the Beyonce concerts this week, or this past week in London. I did have a good time at the Coronation concert with my wife, which was a rare date night.
You also had a very good reason not to be.
Yeah, no, that's true. Actually, funny enough, that reminds me, one of the first concert that my wife and I went to was incredibly special, and I would love to go back and do it again. It was in 2005. We weren't married at the time. It was in 2005. It was in London. It was a Live 8 concert in the park, and I never win anything, but you had to text message, and then it was all done by lottery, and I got tickets. So her and I went to that concert, and it literally was everyone you can think of played at that concert. I mean, U2, Paul McCartney.
And then you also get like best songs.
Yeah, it was the greatest hits from the greatest performers of all time, all in one afternoon, and the weather was great, and I mean, that was literally the most extraordinary concert, and it was one of the, as I said, it was the first concert that we went to together, I think. So I'd probably go back and redo that 2005 Live 8 concert.
It's the match of the day of concerts. What's the best and what's the worst part of being PM?
Actually, the best time I feel like I've had in this job is I'm a big cricket fan. I got to play cricket in the garden, Downing Street Garden, with some of the T20 side, the England T20 side. I mean, that's if you're a cricket fan, you get to play cricket with your cricket heroes. That's kind of a neat thing to do. So that was a lot of fun in the garden. But probably on a more serious level, it's a little bit the theme of our conversation. I feel that certainly economically, technologically, we're at an incredibly important time in our country's development. So being Prime Minister at that time and being responsible for getting that right and making sure that we in the UK and all our families can really benefit from that is important. And that's a kind of great privilege, actually. So that's the exciting thing about being PM right now. And the worst thing is you touched on it before. It's like many people's demanding jobs. When they take you away from your family, particularly when you have young kids, that's obviously sad. And like many parents, working parents across the country, not being able to spend enough time with your kids is something that you are always sad about.
We actually had the Aussie cricket captain Pat Cummins on the show, which comes out tomorrow. I think our team were trying to injure him at every point in his journey.
Good. Yeah, actually, I was watching bits of the World Test Championship over the last few days. The reasons for us to be hopeful, but also and they were in quite good nick. So it's going to be fantastic.
Penultimate one. What does the exercise routine look like?
Exercise routine?
Yeah.
I think I remember you asked me about this, didn't you, last time?
Yeah, and it was Cody on Peloton.
Yeah, Peloton. Yeah, so it still is that.
It's still Cody.
If I can manage one of those a week, I'm happy. And I've been trying to get back into running, which I haven't done for ages. But I try and also do a run on the treadmill once a week, which I've been able to do for the last kind of month or so. So I'm trying to get back into that.
Sorry, do you miss running outside?
I'm not a big runner outside, actually. I just, the treadmill. Yeah, I'm not, because I don't really like running. So the benefit of the treadmill is that you're just kind of forced to run, right? If I'm outside, slow down and get bored and tired. So, but not enough exercise. It felt like for a long time, the most exercise I got was walking upstairs from my flat downstairs to my office. And that wasn't
the
great.
pedometer on.
Yeah.
Final one for you. What do you want your legacy to be?
I think there's always have to be context specific. And for me, it's important that I restore people's trust in politics. And that means the way I go about this job is different. I want to change how politics is done. So people believe in their politicians, believe in their prime minister, believe in their government, and believe that they're doing the right thing, but also genuinely able to make a difference to their lives. And I go on about these 5 priorities I have a lot: to halve inflation, grow the economy, reduce debt, cut waiting lists, and stop the boats, because I'm laser focused on delivering those. I said to people that's what I was going to do because I believe that's what they want me to do. Those are the country's priorities, and I want them ultimately to feel, he said he was going to do these things and he worked hard at it, did it in the right way, and made a difference to us. So, it's obviously a work in progress and we've got a long way to go, but that's what I'm hard at doing.
Listen, thank you so much for doing this. It's so fantastic to be able to have this conversation, and so I really appreciate it.
No, it's great to spend some time with you. Thanks for coming in.
Fantastic.